50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light, of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to the end of the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the claims and chains of discrimination. 100 years ago later, the Negro lives on a highly lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity 100 years later. The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American has to fall and is their heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this scarce obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that'll give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time. To lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off some steam and will now be content with rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual.
there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on a high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new malignancy, which has engulfed the Negro community, must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, we have come to realize that their destiny is tied up to our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is extremely bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must take the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asked the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as Negroes' basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating, for whites only.
We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believe he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I'm not unmindful that some of you may have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and scattered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, The sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering in the heat of injustice, sweltering in the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists and its governor whose lips is dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, that one day, right down in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with little white girls and little white boys as sisters and as brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, all the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh can see it together.
This is our hope. This is the faith I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring,
When we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children,
Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics,
will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual.
Free at last, free at last.
Thank God Almighty.
We are free at last. What you have just been a part of is an open forum of a group of family and friends. Their portrayal of an iconic speech. My hope is that this inspires you to do something similar and it sparks a conversation. Now, let's hear directly from the orators and actors of this project as they share their thoughts. Please remember, thank you, and remember to give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, and a comment. Thank you.
One of the main points that I found to be true in the I Have a Dream speech is that political rights should be given to all people. Segregation and discrimination have forced Blacks into society's margins, and I believe the second half of the speech paints the dream of a better, fairer future for racial harmony and integration. So in looking at this speech and reading it all the way through, I just feel as though this speech was designed to provide some type of hope for Black people and giving them the inspiration that they needed to continue to fight the civil rights movement.
I think it's weird that even though this speech was given almost 60 years ago, that a lot of the issues that Dr. King spoke about in his speech are still present in the United States today. For example, it's 2022 and we're still debating voting rights in the United States. It's a little disheartening and disappointing, and it makes me wonder if Dr. King's dream will really ever come true. Maybe one day.
I appreciated being able to read the I Have a Dream speech in totality because it allows me to understand where certain things that might be spoken out of context come from. A lot of people, in politics and trying to make a point, will quote people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King trying to, win an argument. But a lot of times, a lot of people may not know the exact context in which whatever they're quoting comes from. And I really appreciate knowing, because we've all heard of, certain things from the speech, and we've all heard people try to make points with certain things that Dr. King or Malcolm X says. And knowing exactly how he said it and what he meant is very beneficial.
To know where you're going, you need to know your past. And through the speech of Martin Luther King, we definitely see what our people have been through and the different sacrifices they were making to have the livelihood that we have today. But there's still so much work to be done. Within every single movement that we've had, we have made gains and had losses, but we keep striving forward. We are resilient, but with resilient, you can get burnt out. I think it's important to call back to these speeches that not only give us the ambition to move forward, but a reflection of ourselves.
Good morning. I think the speech and the project was a great idea. It helps us to appreciate what was going on then, now, and in the future. When you actually read the full speech and not just excerpts, it opens your eyes. It opened my eyes then, and even more down now that I've gotten older. That speech embodies everything that was going on then, everything that was going on prior to that, 10, 15, 20, 100 years ago. And if you really read the full speech, what's still going on, some of it now. So I think the project was great, and I hope this is something that we can do now and into the future.
Peace and greetings, family. My name is Akil. I'm a good friend and brother of Emmanuel. And all I have to say is let's fire all differences between us. Let's fire being black, brown, yellow, white. They're all differences. Differences cause conflict. So when you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. Let's fire being Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, agnostic, atheist. They're all differences. Differences cause conflict. When you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. Let's fire being Democrat, Republican, Communist, Socialist, Monarchist, Nationalist, Socialist. They're all differences. Differences cause conflict. When you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. Let's fire being American, European, Middle Eastern, Arab, Asian, Indian, Australian, Canadian. They're all differences. Differences cause conflict. When you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. Let's fire being straight, gay, bi, tri, trans, queer. They're all differences. Differences cause conflict. When you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. Let's fire all differences between us. Gemini, Capricorn, Libra, Pisces, Virgo, Aries, they're all differences. You got water signs and fire signs. It's all conflict. So when you fire the differences, you fire the conflict. And let's just behave. Let's just behave like we were created after the image and after the likeness of God.
The I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which took place in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, August 28, 1963. It has been estimated that over 250,000 people were there to witness the anticipated speech by Dr. King. On that warm August day, my grandmother took me to see Dr. King. I had just turned 6 years of age, 25 days earlier, and was living in North Philadelphia. There are 4 primary things that I remember out of that time frame. Number one, and it was a large number of people attended this event. Number 2, my grandmother asked a young man standing nearby if he would allow me to sit on his shoulders. And number 3, my grandmother told me to look around and notice that there were white people there to see Dr. King too, she said. And number 4 was the silence and the laughter and all the amens that I heard throughout the speech. This is just one of several events my grandmother took me to see. Others included Malcolm X and some Black Panther Party meetings, etc. We would have many discussions about the different events that she took me to see, and I think Dr. King's I Have a Dream was her favorite. So again, I want to thank each of the orators and the voluntary actors there. I want to thank them for their talent and their time on this project. Most of them responded to my request within just minutes to say yes. And I thank you for that. I'm hopeful that this reading will encourage you to pull together a few of your friends and family to read aloud this and other historic speeches, and the simple goal of being more familiar with the content and the message that the orator was trying to convey. The King holiday was established in 1986, 18 years after Dr. King's assassination on April 4th, 1968. He was 39 years old.